Blog Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to Around the Nest, Jay-talking our way around the Toronto Blue Jays minor league organization. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler, the voice of the Lansing Lugnuts, coming to you from Bowling Green, Kentucky this week. And as we go around, we'll start off in Triple-A Buffalo, work our way down to Double-A New Hampshire, then to A-Advanced Dunedin, before finally finishing things off in Lansing, Midwest League, the Class Single-A Blue Jays affiliate. Here first, Ben Wagner, the Triple-A Buffalo Bisons, the best record in the International League. They are 10-4. Ben, how are you doing?
Doing wonderful. I mean, how can you be doing poorly with the way that this team has been playing, and not only been playing, but really been playing from top to bottom. Not only the pitching, but the hitting and everything collectively has led to a couple of exciting weeks to start the year.
Well, the pitching, especially having a look at things, the best pitching in the league, I guess the best words that I could say to you right now are Lehigh Valley. 5 wins against the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs, and you get to play them all weekend long.
Yeah, Lehigh Valley makes a lot of teams look good right here at the start of the season, and Buffalo has been able to do that. Maybe that's the sign of a good team. You know, you don't mess around with teams that you should dominate, and you battle it out with teams that you're supposed to battle it out with. And if Pawtucket and Buffalo's battles have been a good indicator of who the best two teams here at the start of the season are, we've definitely seen that on display because they've been such tightly contested ball games and really, really well pitched as well. But Lehigh Valley has showed little interest in battling Buffalo so far, even beyond the 4-run ninth inning on Sunday at Coca-Cola Field, to allowing a new season high in runs, a new season high in hits for the Bisons last night when they just absolutely throttled the Pigs.
We're joined this year and partnered up as well by Bluebird Banter, part of SB Nation. So looking over the questions, Ben, are you ready for some of their questions for you this year?
Fire away.
All right, let's begin with Chad Jenkins. Just wondering about Jenks. Is he starting just due to a lack of other arms, or is this another shift in role?
It's not exactly a shift in role. It's a shift in opportunity and also for what would be a best when available at that time. If he's not pitching on that day, or if he hadn't pitched the day before and the Toronto Blue Jays need somebody for length in the bullpen or for a spot start, Jenkins is going to be that guy right away. He rode the shuttle all year long, but wasn't that exactly spot starter, if you will. But now that he's got another bullet in the belt, so to speak, he can go up there and just provide Toronto just one more thing. You know they like him, or they wouldn't keep bringing him back and forth. But at the end of spring training, when he wasn't going to make the big league club, they sent him out of camp. Rick Langford sat down with himself, Sano as well, after they were trying to fill out roles from a Buffalo standpoint, but also then on what would be in the arsenal for the Blue Jays if they came calling, where would Jenkins fit in? So they pitched him the idea about being a starter. It's the first time in 2 years that Jenkins is going to go into a season being a starter, but he's 100% committed to it. He's reconditioned himself for the 4 days in between the starts, not only of how he goes about his routine on the field, but also how he's preparing his body, his workout regimen. He's ramping himself up. It's still not there exactly yet to be, as you know, that every fifth day guy. He's still working on a little bit of the pitch count. He's still getting his body back to 100% starter shape, if you will, only because, you know, his window of out of spring training was kind of short. So that's the reason that he's doing that. But he's totally embraced the role. He wants the ball every fifth day, and his last 2 starts have been really, really good for Buffalo.
I'm going to be interested to keep on following that transition. When he was drafted, he was seen as a workhorse, a bulldog sort of guy, and that's what I saw in Lansing, that he would routinely work deep into games and he would battle the entire way through. From him into members of the bullpen, another question from Bluebird Banter about relievers Gregory Infante and Matt West. How have they looked beyond the pitching line?
Don't know about Matt West. He's not with Buffalo, but Gregory Infante has come out of the bullpen, and he's been okay. I don't think he's been great. The velocity is there. We love the velo that you're going to see from Infante, and we had flashes of that before he got hurt with the Bisons in 2014. The slider has some pretty good bite, but it's also the most inconsistent pitch that we've seen from Infante. Fastball location is going to set up everything for him, and that makes the slider and his off-speed stuff that much more dangerous. So it's a work in progress for a guy that's already been now 3-4 years removed from his last opportunity in the big leagues, but he's still trying to get back there. I know they love the stuff. And once he's able to harness it and make a couple of tweaks, perhaps working with Randy St. Clair, Rick Langford is here as well and saw him throw live last night in the win. There was a runaway victory for Buffalo. But, again, he was out there and he was trying to get outs. And we've definitely seen better from Gregory as of last year. But it's there. And now it's just going to be getting to that step where you can find it and find it consistently.
You've also seen better weather at times than you've had at the early part of this year. Our question of the week is, how has the weather affected the Bison season?
Well, if it's not the weather, it's the power supply. We had a game that downtown Buffalo lost a portion of its city blocks for whatever reason, just a freak thing. Coca-Cola Field was in the first game of a doubleheader when the juice left the yard, and out of safety for the players and everybody from concession workers to the fans who are actually in the ballpark, we completed in natural sunlight game number 1, and then we shut it down and, ask everybody to come back later that night against Pawtucket or the next day against Pawtucket. So how has Buffalo handled it? Well, if the record tells you anything, they've handled it pretty well, even though it's been very chaotic. I think it's the toughest on the pitchers, because they haven't been able to get out, get normal work, and fall into very few routines. Guys, even though there's going to be a rain out, even though there's going to be a lengthy delay, guys from a position player standpoint, they still come in really early in the afternoon. They get their hacks in. They work on their flips. They look at video. They get the workout done as well, and then they call it a night. So from a position player standpoint, it's not as disruptive as the guys that are asked to throw a lot and fall into not exactly defined roles, but at least certain roles within the given road trip or homestands.
Ben, have you had that happen before with a power outage? I ask because in independent ball, we had lightning strike a power transformer right before our All-Star game was about to be played. And then in Montgomery, Alabama, we lost all power right in the middle of the day. And so everything else, I had to call the game on cell phone. There was no power to broadcast for any other way. And the scoreboard was down, but we did get it in before sunset. How have your dealings been with power loss and baseball?
We were fortunate in Buffalo a couple of weeks ago that when the power went out, for whatever reason, a section of the ballpark didn't lose power that included the press box. There were no overhead lights, but at least from a broadcast perspective, we kept the power and the ability to broadcast the game. So we kind of continued on as we were just updating people about the situation in the ballparks. But, from a broadcast perspective, we never missed a beat. The only other time that I've had an instance happen like that, it was in my final year in the South Atlantic League, 2006. We were in Salisbury, Maryland, the home of the Delmarva Shorebirds at Purdue Stadium, and off the highway, somebody cleared out a transformer when their car slid off the road, and it was on a Friday night. There were about 6,800 people in the ballpark, and the place went completely dark. It was, fortunately, in between innings. So it wasn't like it happened mid-pitch or mid-play. That would have been a lot more fun, tell the story. But it was a very scary moment because you've got nearly 7,000 people. All of a sudden the place goes dark and your eyes haven't adjusted yet. So it's pitch black. And it went silent. It was eerily silent, knowing how many people were in the ballpark and around you. And then all of a sudden, it took a couple of minutes, but a few emergency lights would pop on, and there was just enough of a glow that you could get by and at least see the hand in front of your face. But for a few moments, it was really, really scary.
I suppose that's one of those matters that when it happens, you wonder, this could be something that happens a lot more often than this. It was a Bill James story that I'd read that he was researching. I think it might have been from a baseball game in the 40s, where the lights went out mid-windup. And when the lights came back on, the batter, the catcher, the umpire, and all the fielders are all flat on their face, and the pitcher's still holding the baseball out there on the mound.
That's what I would do. I would duck and cover quickly.
This is Ben Wagner, the voice of the Triple-A Buffalo Bisons. Ben, the team ERA, it's only a couple of weeks in, but it's underneath 2. What's the best team pitching staff that you've had the opportunity to experience?
That's a really good question because we've had different pitching staffs along the way that have had their own portions and moments of dominance. You can go back to Cleveland Indians where we had Brian Slocum and Adam Miller and guys, that were established and on the shuttle back and forth, but, good arms. To me, some of the most dominant pitching that we've seen has at times been from Matt Harvey when he was here. in 2012. This may be, though, from top to bottom, the best pitching staff that we've seen in Buffalo in my 9 years, because not only do you have veteran guys that go out on the mound with a plan and an approach, but then also in the game, they don't let their plan dictate how they're going to go from start to finish. They let the game dictate then on the adjustments that they're going to make on the fly. That's from the starters, guys that have gone through the wars. Hardly anybody, has had more success and more opportunity in the grandest stages like Randy Wolf. He's making out the five-man rotation. That's just one of the pieces. But also this bullpen, where you go from the average mile-per-hour range, about 96 miles an hour, from the guys that are from Jeff Francis, Randy Wolf, Chad Jenkins, and Scott Copeland, not exactly mid-90 guys. Then all of a sudden Gregory Infante comes in, or Bull Schultz comes in, and Ryan Tepera. Those guys can reach back and really bring it. So it adds a whole other dynamic to the Bisons pitching staff late in ball games that, to me, looks like a major league staff, when you can ramp it up that notch, and plus the repertoire. And you have the Steve Delabars, who's, yes, trying to fine-tune just a couple of things, but also has that dominant stuff. So these are the pieces that Buffalo is dealing with, and that's in large portion why you're seeing an ERA under 2.
How is that fine-tuning going right now for Steve Delabar?
It's not going bad. The numbers are really good for Steve. They're working on the splitter, which is, fortunately for him, it's been kept down in the zone. Slider has got good bite on it. He's seemingly happy with its location, the fastballs as well. He probably had his doubting in Pawtucket the other day. He threw 9 pitches, got 3 outs, and 8 were for strikes. It was a good morning, good afternoon, and then good night kind of outing for Steve Delabar. And if he had a bead of sweat on him, I'd be shocked, because he just breezed through the entire frame. Things are working well for Steve right now, and it's just now a matter of time and opportunity for his next opportunity then to go back to the big leagues.
Speaking of opportunities, on the offensive side, things aren't any easier for the other team. I've got a soft spot for Chris Colabello because we were both rookies in the Can-Am League the exact same season. So I'm enjoying watching him bash. And meanwhile, the other team can't get Matt Haig out. No matter what they do, he's going to work his way on base.
See, the last 23 times he's been at the plate, 16, one way or the other, he reached. He's been walked. He's been hit by a pitch. He's reached on an error, and of course now he's waving the magic wand in the 340s. It's been an unbelievable week for Matt Haig, and I'll tell you what. This is the all-star caliber player that we expected to see last year in August when he only spent a couple of weeks with the Bisons, and excited then to find out that he was going to come back and be a member of the herd. He plays solid defensively at third base. He's made great plays to his left and his right, and he can go over and play first base as well. And it's interchangeable parts with moving Matt Haig around, and Chris Colabello as well. He's played at first base, he's DH, and he's played in right field. Andy Wilkins is DH, and he's played at first base as well. So the bats here in Buffalo are really fun to have, and right now they're a lot of fun to watch too.
One of your younger players is Andy Burns. I believe there was some anticipation about Burns getting to AAA and what he would do. I got to see him after he sat out a year transferring to change colleges and then got drafted during that transfer year, so he was still a little bit rusty with Lansing. He's only played 5 games with Buffalo, and he's played a couple of games at second, a couple of games at third. Has he flashed anything?
Not defensively yet. But his debut was something to write home about. There's no doubt about that. He went 4 for 4 in his AAA debut, and you saw, one, his ability at the plate to control the at-bat, but when he was on base, too, we saw the wheels. He swept 18 bases last year. He got the green light from Gary Allenson. He said, pick your spots, so he's not going to run himself out of an inning. But we've seen those tools on display, no doubt. Hasn't had to go, too far back in the hole or, too far back behind the bag as well and display the arm. But what we've seen from him range-wise is only indicative of the balls that have been put in play. And he's made every play that he should have made here in Buffalo. So it's been a pretty smooth transition. Gary Allison is trying to mix and match a lot of guys with Jonathan Diaz and Munenori Kawasaki, who have to play up the middle as well with Andy Burns. So he's trying to find the right formula to get these guys not only different positions, but make sure they spend at least a couple of days in a row at those positions before he's got to shuttle one or the other guy out of the lineup. Andy Burns is in there tonight, for example. Munenori Kawasaki gets the day off as Jonathan Diaz then works it short.
Before we look ahead to your upcoming homestand, real quick, batting around, is that 9 batters or 10 batters?
Batting around will be 9.
9 batters.
Well, all right.
Did you hear about this controversy?
I need clarification. I need clarification. If you bat around, all right. So you go as batting around. I'm going to say the Bisons have batted around if that 9th man gets to the batter's box.
That is your call. At what point do you say that the Bisons have batted around?
When the 10th man steps in.
Yes.
Okay.
This was a controversy
good.
that arose last week. And I said, after the 9th at-bat starts.
Yeah. That's funny. Now I feel like I've appeased the masses.
No.
So you go 1 through 9, and when the guy that led off the inning digs back in, that's when I say, all right, they batted around.
Beautiful. And finally, you're on the road right now, but after you finish things up in Lehigh Valley, take us through the upcoming homestand at Coca-Cola Field for fans that would like to attend.
Buffalo rolls home. They'll start a 7-game homestand on Monday night. They'll welcome in the Norfolk Tides for the first of a 4-game series. We're under the lights Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 6:05. Hopefully get everybody to the ballpark a little bit earlier with some sunlight that's left. Also, get you home a little bit earlier before the cold weather sets in. We've got day baseball on Thursday, 3-game series to wrap up the homestand. Our first official Friday night bash that includes the happy hour as well as fun festivities over the weekend, and Buster's Kids Club Sunday, which is always fun for the kids. Includes kids run the bases. We're going to make posters and signs, also picture frames at the ballpark as well for the Kids Club members. It's starting to feel again like baseball in Buffalo, which is the good news as the sun continues to warm everything up and warmer temperatures overall arrive. And one thing I want to throw out there too, which is really important, this entire month, the Bisons are accepting Canadian currency at par when paid with cash. So there's no exchange rate that's made at the concession stand. If it costs you $18.95 and you visiting us from Southern Ontario and you've got a $20 bill in your pocket, you're going to go and get the exact change. So all of our Canadian currency will be accepted at par, and then we're going to reevaluate where the strength of the dollars are moving into the month of May.
For the latest Buffalo Bisons information, go to bisons.com. Meanwhile, find Ben Wagner on Twitter at BenWag247. Ben, thank you very much for your time.
Awesome, Jesse. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, till next week. From AAA down to Double-A, Tom Gauthier, the voice of the New Hampshire Fisher Cats. Tom, how's it going?
Hey, Jesse, what's going on? Long time no talk to you, my friend.
I know. Well, here we go. We're a couple of weeks into 2015. We're reaching the end of the first month of the season. For the New Hampshire Fisher Cats, what's the lead story?
The lead story here has been the walk-offs, the comebacks in late innings at home. Part of them on home runs, but just part of them with some sheer determination and a little character here. We've played 8 home games, and we've won 4 of those in our last at-bat. One of them in the bottom of the 8th inning, a 3-run homer by Jake Fox. And then the other 3 have all been walk-offs, including 2 in 10 innings, the most recent of which was last night with Shane Opitz dropping a single to left field, his first Double-A RBI, good for a walk-off, part of a 2-run rally in the bottom of the 10th inning, all with 2 outs, 3 hits and a walk to string together that winning rally and send the Fisher Cats home to a win. If you wanted to look at the subtext or the sub-story, Will, 1 and 1A maybe, it would be the fact that we were 5-2 at home for the first time ever. We won 2 series to begin a season at home, or to begin a season period, had never won the first 2 series, and then we proceeded to go 1-6 on the road and play some pretty ugly baseball. So that would be the secondary story to the heroics that we've seen here late in ball games at home.
Let me add a third story. Let's talk about Matt Boyd. He's at the top of the league in pitching. 14 1/3 innings in 3 starts. He struck out 24. It looks great in black and white. How does it look in person?
Well, I think it looks great in black and white to a certain extent in the fact that the strikeouts are high, the strikeouts per innings, et cetera. But I think if you were to add maybe, and again, when you've given up 1 unearned run and you threw 5 no-hit innings your last time out, you're certainly looking for things to find. But I think the fact that his longest outing this year has been 5 innings, that's probably the biggest concern right now. He has looked good, but when you have a guy that gets a lot of strikeouts, especially at a younger level, and this being Double-A, but Matt's certainly not the most experienced pitcher yet in terms of innings, you have a tendency to throw a lot of pitches. He's not getting 3-pitch strikeouts, and when that happens, the pitch count climbs, you walk a couple of guys, he's walked 7 in about 15 innings of work. So not a terrible ratio, but certainly not a great ratio. But he's not giving up hits, he's getting a lot of strikeouts, and he's not giving up runs either. So there's certainly been far more positives. But if you were to look at it just under that microscope, so to speak, you would hope that he would go 6 or 7 innings or start going 6 or 7 innings sooner rather than later, and maybe having 7 strikeouts, but having 6 or 7 innings to help save that bullpen every time he goes out.
With that bullpen, save for those couple of blown saves by Corey Burns, things have looked lights out.
Yeah, 1.87 ERA after last night's game, where the only run that scored was on a balk because Blake McFarland quick pitched essentially the hitter that was in the plate at the time, Brandon Nimmo, in the 10th, and Fisher Cats bailed him out by getting a couple of runs after that. But the bullpen's not giving up a home run. Bullpen's allowed only 11 earned runs in almost 50 innings. And if you think about our starting rotation, they don't have a victory yet. They only have 3 quality starts in the 14 games started by an actual starting pitcher. We had one game with a doubleheader. Dustin Antolin made his first pro start in. But the game started by actual starting pitchers, they only have 3 quality starts. And again, they don't have a victory here. So part of that, obviously, is maybe a lack of offense. But the other part is they haven't really gone far enough into games, or they've gone far enough and maybe the offense hasn't been there. But not a lot of gems from the starting rotation, but that bullpen has been a huge reason why we've been here and why we've been able to come back so many times late in ball games.
To put a microscope over a couple of those relievers, questions from Bluebird Banter revolving around Luis Perez first and Matt West second. How are they looking?
Both have looked fine. I don't think I have to go back to look at West's numbers off the top of my head. West hasn't given up a run yet. He's gone 8 2/3. He's only allowed 6 hits. I think the first outing for him, maybe a little rough, maybe a little rust and some, I don't want to say uneasiness, but certainly, your debut in a new organization, that's probably part of it. But he's looked pretty good, and then Luis Perez has looked very good. Aside from a few walks here and there, he's another guy that haven't given up a run just yet. So looks good. The velocity's pretty good. He was never a guy that threw 95, but he's been consistently in the low 90s. And he's been able to go out there and I don't know if he's thrown back-to-back yet, but he's every other day at this point or every third day depending on the schedule. So there have been no setbacks health-wise, which I think is the big thing for him because, he was a promising guy for that bullpen a couple of years ago, and then Tommy John surgery and has really missed the last 2 seasons for all intents and purposes. So, it certainly hasn't been the best of times for Perez, but I think that he's looked good so far, and I think as the season goes along and he starts to get into warmer weather, we'll start to see him used in back-to-back games more often, maybe for 2 innings at a time. And if that happens, it's probably not long before he's in Triple-A if those numbers continue to stay like they are.
This is Tom Gauthier, the voice of the Double-A New Hampshire Fisher Cats. You've got great guys to root for in the bullpen and a cult hero in the starting lineup in Jake Fox, who's about my age, and there he is, still hitting, still bashing. How's it been having Jake Fox on the team?
Unfortunately, Jesse, I can say that I'm actually older than Jake Fox, and he's the old guy in the clubhouse. So that makes me feel old right there. But no, he's been great. He's a high energy guy, and I know that last year we saw Fox, and you didn't think much about it. You just see another guy that's been around the loop a few times, and he's come back to Double-A, signed out of the Mexican League. Not unlike what we had with Corey Aldridge last year, and Aldridge is a great guy to have in the clubhouse. But I think Fox is by far the best guy in that clubhouse. I know that he's already talked to some of the younger guys. Younger guys have gone to him to talk about things, and he's even approached some of the Double-A veterans. I mean, most of his team has been at this level, if not higher, before, so they certainly don't necessarily need that guidance, but they've gone to Jake, and Jake has certainly provided that. And not only that, but he's a phenomenal guy, just a great guy to talk to, real high-energy guy, loves to play the game. And I remember talking to him that we had a scrimmage against a Division II college, and talking to him the next day, he said, I loved it, man. He goes, I thought it was great. We got to play somebody different. We get to play a game, and you get to work out a little bit of that adrenaline, a little bit of those opening day jitters before actual opening day. So it tells you that he still loves this game. And I remember last year, Redding said that you're going to love this guy. He's a great clubhouse guy. They were saying about him last year in Redding, and so now that he's here, that's the first thing people say is first-class dude and a great clubhouse guy, and I think that's why the Blue Jays picked him up.
Three guys look like they're leading your offense. There's Jake Fox, the veteran, helping out with the young guys and really leading the way any way that he can. There's Matt Newman returning to the roster, batting .327. And then there's the prospect to keep your eye on, Dwight Smith Jr., the left-handed batting. Wherever you put him, in the outfield at the moment, there were talks that he might be playing second base, but he's playing the Fisher Cats outfield. So the Fisher Cats aren't scoring runs, and yet it seems to me, Tom, like you're getting consistent productivity, at least from that trio.
Yeah, those three guys have done a really nice job. Fox has provided the power. Newman is driven in runs in bunches. He's third in the league with 11 RBIs, had another one last night that started the scoring for us. And he's really been good defensively again as well. He's got a good arm out there in right field, a guy that pitched at one point at Arizona State a little bit here. So he dabbled and he wasn't a full-time starter there, but he's got a good arm and, real quiet guy, kind of one of those lead-by-example guys, doesn't say a whole lot. And then, of course, Dwight Smith Jr., he was the prospect coming in, and if there is such a thing as an unheralded prospect, it would probably be Dwight Smith Jr., maybe partly because there are so many guys in this team that have been here before. You sort of notice that he's only one of the two guys that hasn't played in Double-A before, so he kind of slips through the cracks there with Shane Opitz, but been a fun guy to watch and a very – it's tough to say. I don't want to say he's not a boring player, but you watch him and everything just comes so easy. We really haven't seen him get a chance to turn on the jets and start to hit for some power yet. We saw a little bit of it last night, hit a ball to the gap in right center field, and on a warmer night, he probably has a stand-up triple, settled for a double last night. Almost looked like he tweaked his hamstring a little bit because it was so cold, but certainly been a fun guy to watch and a guy that just moves about his business very casually. Looks like he's barely trying, but all of a sudden he's there, and all of a sudden he has a double and he's standing at second.
The fun thing with him when he was in Lansing, what everybody talked about was his eyebrows were the most active part of him because he was quiet and relaxed and got along with everybody, but those eyebrows just jump up and down whether he's laughing or listening.
Yeah, and he's a pretty loud guy. He doesn't talk much, but when he laughs, you can hear him. So I haven't seen the eyebrows yet, but I'll have to the next time I see him, I'm just going to be staring, waiting for them to move up and down, and it's probably going to freak him out, but at least I'll say Jesse told me to look at the eyebrows and to make sure that that's how you read your emotions.
Our Around the Nest question of the week has to deal with weather. How has the early April weather affected New Hampshire, and how has it affected you so far?
Other than a half an inch of snow on opening day, it's been fine. We were snowed out opening day. It was cold, I guess, that first Friday and Saturday. But after that, it was beautiful the rest of that homestand. Last night was cold again, but we've only had the one rain out on opening day. We got the doubleheader in that Sunday, so we've played 15 games in 15 days as it is. Got an off day coming up on Thursday this week, so the weather has not been an issue in terms of canceling games. Last year, we lost 2 games back-to-back in the opening homestand because of rain and then ice the next day. It was so cold, so we've been fortunate that after opening day, weather's not impacted the actual playing of a game, and it was the same on the road too. It was decent on the road. The weather was in the 60s or upper 50s, so it was good there. And now that we're back home, it feels like April, but it's not raining, which is a victory.
Well, take me through this current homestand. What's coming up for fans going out to see the New Hampshire Fisher Cats?
Well, if you're a big fan of monkeys, we have Curious George, the world's favorite monkey in the ballpark. The man in the yellow hat is already down in the field right now. So we have Curious George here Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then we actually started something a couple of years ago, doing some Chamber of Commerce events at 5:30, inviting the local chambers out, providing them with tickets through some different sponsorships and getting those folks out to utilize our Samuel Adams Bar and Grill in left field. We have a couple of those coming up on Tuesday and Wednesday. And those always produce a nice turnout on what we all know is typically a slower night in minor league baseball. You have your Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays when it's 40 degrees and windy. So it's been nice to have those. But the big news this weekend is certainly Curious George. He's here. We're going to have a pregame sing-along on Sunday with a local parenting baby. We call them a mafia because there are all these moms that go to this place, but it's a great place and a great resource for new moms. And certainly my wife went there when she had our daughter a couple of years ago. So they'll be here on Sunday with all of their kids and their parents and their moms and having a good time then.
Excellent. You can find Tom Gauthier on Twitter at TomGauthier21 and the New Hampshire Fisher Cats, nhfishercats.com. Tom, thank you very much. Until next week.
Sounds good, Jesse. We'll talk to you soon.
Voice of Double-A New Hampshire, and from Double-A down to Class A Advanced, here's Marshall Kellner, the voice of the A-Advanced Dunedin Blue Jays. Marshall, how's life treating you?
It's good, Jesse. How are you?
Doing well. All right. What are the latest headlines from Dunedin? How are you enjoying things with the DJs?
Well, I know the weather, I hate to brag, but the weather here has been pretty spectacular. Aside from, I know that's the theme of the week, but aside from a couple of rainouts on Monday, actually not a rainout, just one rainout on Monday, but on Sunday, the rain played an interesting role. We were in Brevard County on getaway day. We only had an hour trip up the coast to Daytona, but it was 2-0. The game was going along smoothly. Dunedin was winning. And then after the top of the 7th inning, when we hit, they pulled the tarp, and the umpires waited a bit too long to pull the tarp, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions. And they're a little short-staffed in Brevard County this time of year. The college interns have not arrived, all of them yet. So they had to run to the tarp. One of the broadcasters was running across the field as well to get to the tarp. It took them a little bit to get on. So it rained for about 10 minutes. The delay was about 2 hours. So all in all, it was a 5.5-hour game, and then we ended up losing the game 3-2 in 12 innings. So right when the delay ended, the 2-0 lead was blown very quickly. So that was kind of a rough game for the DJs. Lost 4 out of 6 on the road trip, but lost 2 rubber games. Had a chance to win a couple series, but just couldn't get those rubber games against Brevard County and Daytona.
What were the brightest spots, though, even in the midst of those losses?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Jimmy Cordero, who spent all of the last year with you in Lansing. Cordero on Sunday, in that 12-inning loss, pitched a couple of innings, and in one of them gave up a leadoff triple. The game was tied at 2 at the time in the 8th inning, I believe, and gave up a leadoff triple and went strikeout, pop out, strikeout to get out of the jam.
Whew.
And their gun only reads up to 99. And here the gun only shows 2 numbers, but if it's over 99, I guess Aaron Sanchez one time hit over 100 miles an hour, and it just showed 00 or 01. There it just shows 99, and I found out later that Jimmy Cordero hit 102 miles an hour twice. So that was pretty impressive, and I talked to Vince Horstman the next day, the pitching coach, and he said, that night he looked like a big league reliever. He needs to be more consistent from appearance to appearance, but he's been very impressive so far out of the bullpen. Alberto Tirado doesn't throw quite as hard as Jimmy, but he's been solid as well out of the pen. His control issues from last year seem to have improved dramatically.
Well, 2 big prospects. I think Alberto Tirado and Jairo Labourt have been tied together, whether it's because they're about the same age or because they've been moving up through the system together. Both of them going from Bluefield, trying to skip up to Lansing last year, then both of them dropping down to Vancouver, finding themselves, and now each of them skipping the Midwest League, joining your Dunedin Blue Jays. Tirado out of the bullpen, Jairo Labourt getting the nod on opening day. For Labourt, there was that one rough outing. However, those control issues, they might be a little bit of a problem for him, even if Alberto Tirado is behind them or beyond them. But it seems like both of those guys, they're just as unhittable as ever.
No question. And I think Labourt had a little rough go of it last night with 3 walks in the first inning, 5 walks in 4 innings overall. But his last 2 innings, he settled down a little bit. And it's just been good, bad in terms of his 4 starts. He was very solid on opening night, sharp. He works extremely quickly, and you can tell when he's confident with his command. When he's not, he puts some runners on and then starts to labor a bit. And one thing I talked to Vince Horstman about with Tirado was everybody talks about control issues, throwing more strikes. That's important. But as you advance in the higher levels, you need to have control within the strike zone as well. And Tirado only has 3 walks in 8 innings, 9 strikeouts, but he had an appearance about 5-6 days ago here in Dunedin where he gave up a long home run in his first inning, then settled down, and the next inning was 1-2-3 with a couple of strikeouts, and he had better control down in the zone. So he threw a strike on the home run, but it was left elevated. So that's the next step for him. Yes, throwing more strikes, he's done that, but now from outing to outing, having better control within the strike zone.
How about Jason Aquino? He was acquired via trade for Tyler Ibarra. It seems like Aquino's been one of your better starters.
I would say he's been the best starter, actually, Jesse. I think he's been considered. He's gone over 5 innings each time. His last start against the Daytona Tortugas in Game 2 of a doubleheader when the DJs really needed a win in that game was really solid, almost completed 6 innings. And he's got a really good changeup. He's always around the plate, and he kept hitters off balance really effectively in that game. The second outing, he was hit around a little bit, but first and third outings have been very impressive, and he got his first win, deservedly so. So I think at 22 years old, he might be a guy to watch. He was ranked as the 25th ranked prospect in the Colorado Rockies organization before the trade by Baseball America. So they have their eye on him as well.
On the offensive side, I think we can look at 1 through 9 and say there are some guys getting off to really cold starts. Are there any hitters you're starting to see those sparks from, thinking that they're coming around?
Yeah, it has been a cold start, really until a 4 spot in the 9th inning. We were down 10-2 yesterday and scored 4 in the 9th inning, put the tying run aboard, or put the tying run at the plate with Matt Dean up, and he grounded it short to end the game. But, hopefully that's a little momentum that the Blue Jays can take into the final 2 games here against Brevard County. I would say, Roman Fields is on a 6-game hitting streak right now. Doesn't have a huge, very high average during the streak, but he's got on base consistently. Of his 13 hits, 4 are doubles, and he has a triple as well. He's had doubles down the right field line into the left field corner. I think teams are going to start playing him more on the lines because that's where most of his doubles have gone. Not as much gap to gap, but he also is starting to gain more confidence on the base path. Stealing bases, 6 of 8 stolen bases, and 3 of them have been of third base. When the pitcher, for whatever reason, is not checking him well, or the third baseman's playing way back, he's shown more aggressiveness just taking third in those situations. And he got picked off a couple times in the first few games of the season, but now he's starting to really gain some confidence out there.
With all that young talent that you get to watch on a nightly basis, there's also Michael Saunders working his way back toward the major leagues. What's the latest with Michael? How's he looking?
Yeah, I had a chance to catch up with Michael earlier in the week in the Daytona series, and took about 10 minutes with him, and that interview's on our website at DunedinBlueJays.com. But he's just a tremendously down-to-earth guy, has a ton of perspective. That's the word that kind of jumped out to me when I asked him about the psychological components of the game. He said that's really what separates people from the minor leagues to the big leagues if the talent is there. And you see guys who are very talented, he would say, that just couldn't put it together for whatever reason. Then you see guys without as much talent who are really able to grind, and just had some awesome perspective in that. But I think Michael's still getting his feet underneath him. I mean, it's pretty good for the Blue Jays that originally he was thought to be out till the All-Star break, maybe mid-July, and now, they're expecting him back. I know John Gibbons said that tonight they were expecting him back, but he's actually in our lineup tonight and starting in right field, his second straight start in right field. He'd mostly been in left and DH. But, I think he just needs to get his at-bats in because he missed all of spring training. Those at-bats, played in some extended spring training games, some minor league games, didn't run in some of those. But I think things are starting to progress for Michael Saunders, and he's going to really like hitting in the Rogers Center after coming from Safeco Field. And he's always wanted to be a Blue Jay. He dreamed of that growing up in Victoria, British Columbia. So he's pretty excited to get to the Toronto Blue Jays.
This is Marshall Kellner, the voice of the Dunedin Blue Jays, Class A advanced in the Blue Jays organization. Dunedin right now 6-9. They're in the midst of a homestand. And so, Marshall, take me through this upcoming homestand at Florida Auto Exchange Stadium.
Yeah, long 8-game homestand for the DJs. They lost game 1 last night. Hopefully a bounce back tonight with Murphy Smith on the hill, a newly acquired veteran right-hander, after the A's released him after spring training. But tonight is a T-shirt giveaway. Tomorrow is the famous Bark in the Park. We have a couple of those coming up in the next 2 months. One is tomorrow. And then I like this promotion on Monday, tickets for the price of gas. So usually tickets are $7 general admission. Here I think it's going to be a little less unless we see a really, really big spike, which nobody wants to see. So let's keep those gas prices down for the fans on Monday night.
Well, sounds good. You can find Marshall Kellner. Just go online. Go onto Twitter at Marshall Kellner, Dunedin Blue Jays, DunedinBlueJays.com. Marshall, any questions that you were wondering about with my Class Single-A Lansing Lugnuts?
Well, I think there's some big names there. I mean, Anthony Alford is a guy that a lot of people are talking about. An SEC football player, and he's on your roster. Him or anybody else that you'd be interested in talking about?
Well, first, let's begin with Anthony. He was the very first player in the state of Mississippi's history to be named Mr. Football in the state, both as a high school junior and a senior, and he was also Mr. Baseball as a senior. A big question for Anthony Alford was, hey, can he get in those at-bats, because he was barely playing any baseball at all, while going first to Southern Mississippi to be their quarterback, and then serving as defensive back in Ole Miss. But in the off-season, he chose to play baseball full-time, and then he joined us. He just joined us this week. And immediately, so Marshall, here's the Anthony Alford experience for you. He works the count full in his very first at-bat. He grounds one up the middle, hustles it into a double, moves to third on a bunt by Richard Urania, scores on a ground out, creates the run all by himself, makes a remarkable diving catch in right center, could have made a remarkable diving catch in left center, except the ball popped out of his glove as he hit the ground. And then, while a runner at second base with Tim LeCastro at third, it was a driving wind, his second game with the Lugnuts. It was a line drive by Urania sent to right field. And the right fielder for Fort Wayne's, a big guy, 6'5", Franmil Reyes, made the catch, but he fell down because that ball, twisting in the wind, trying to stay with it, sent him down to his knees, down to his hands, down to the grass. And at second base, Anthony Alford saw his moment. That was the old two-run sacrifice fly. LeCastro scoring from third, and Anthony Alford blazing in from second base on a fly ball to right center. The Anthony Alford experience is legit, and it is awesome.
That's awesome to hear. I know everyone's been talking about the big bats you guys have. Ryan McBroom is a guy who had a great start to his career last year. How's he doing?
Well, he's having a pretty darn good start to this season. Opening day, he flied out to very deep left center and to very deep center field. That is the only game of the season that he has not reached base. Lugnuts are right now 11-4, best record in the Eastern Division, and McBroom is riding a 14-game on-base streak. He's drawing walks, he's gotten hit by a 3, and then he just keeps on getting on, whether he singles to the right side or he doubles to left center. He's got such a great bat, and more that I talk to people in the organization, whether it's Mike Barnett, the roving hitting instructor, whether it's hitting coach Kenny Graham or manager Ken Huckabee, they all say to me, we got ourselves a good one. We got ourselves a mid to late round draft pick who has a major league stick, who is going to make his way up to all the way up and just going to keep on hitting. He's hitting here, and Marshall, I don't think he's gotten hot yet. I think he can go up from this. He's hitting 300 just for the heck of it. He can get a lot better from here, and you might see him before this year is done.
Yeah, how about your starting rotation? Chase DeJong was your opening day starter. How has he looked so far?
I think the two most likely candidates we have for promotion up to Dunedin at some point are Chase DeJong and Shane Dawson. DeJong last year, he was very hittable with the Lansing Lugnuts, and it was a straight fastball, and he wasn't keeping it down, and his curve was inconsistent, and he gave up a lot of home runs. And if not home runs, it was very loud fly balls or doubles to the gap. And DeJong came out in the off-season, and he worked with Sal Fasano to try to figure out what he could do to increase his effectiveness. One thing that they realized was that DeJong was showing the baseball to the batter way too long. So they put the ball into his glove, and they tossed in, the old school, put your hands over your head in the midst of the windup? He now has the entirely old school windup. And he throws, in addition to his usual four-seam fastball, he's going two-seam, he's going cutter, and in the last start, he tossed in a slider that he was always a four-seam curved changeup guy before. Now he's got a slider that he can move in with those moving fastballs, and it's made him entirely different. His command is worlds better. He's striking out guys. He's getting out in front. He's putting away batters. And I think the most important thing is that DeJong is getting ground balls. Way too often before, the outs would come in the air. And now he's getting the kind of outs that he wants, either grounders or he's just striking guys out because he's that dominant.
So, other than him, how about the rest of the pitching staff? Who stood out from the starting standpoint? Because you don't get to have the record that Lansing does just by accident. You've got to be playing some pretty good defense and pitching pretty well.
At some point, I hope you get to see Shane Dawson. You are absolutely right with the pitching and defense. The defense has been really good. Richard Urania has been strong at short. Whether Gunnar Height or Justin Atkinson at third, great. Tim LeCastro at second base, money. Over at first base, Roddy Tellez has worked, and he has turned himself into a much better defender than he used to be. I'd even say that to this point in the season, his defense has been average to a little above. But the pitching. Okay, so Shane Dawson. Dawson's a left-hander out of Drayton Valley, Alberta. Played 6 years of fast-pitch softball. He goes out there to the mound. His first pitch to you is coming in at 75 miles an hour. His next pitch is coming in at 72. And then suddenly it's 88 and you're done because you can't catch up. He can get that velocity up into the low 90s. Or he'll throw that fastball to you at, 62. Or he'll curve you at 57. He has so much fun on the mound. He is above Midwest League batters right now. He took on five innings in his last start against Fort Wayne. Took on 16 batters. He struck out 7. They only got one base runner on against him. He could have fired 20 innings. They were not going to hit him. He leads the league. He's only allowing 5 hits and 51 at-bats this whole year. And Starlene Suriel is a bulldog. Sean Reed Foley is a huge prospect who is just getting more consistent, but his stuff is overpowering. Connor Green, really young, age 20, but what a ceiling for him. And then you almost are tempted to overlook 2 polished college arms in Justin Schaefer, who could be our breakout, maybe not quite Kendall Graveman, but there's potential. His velocity is now 92 to 94. And Chase Mallard, who last year was the Conference USA Pitcher of the Year. He went 14 for 14 in quality starts last season for UAB. And this year, he's the forgotten man in the rotation. When he settles in, he's going to throw 6-7 innings and give up virtually nothing every start. So, Marshall, I tell you what, this Lansing Lugnuts pitching and the depth, if ever Dunedin needs some help, I think around June or July, we might start losing guys because they are ready. They are polished, they are deep, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
Hey, I won't complain. I'm not going to complain if we get some of those guys that you mentioned. A couple guys to close here that I didn't ask you about yet. DJ Davis, a lot of hype about him, and Josh Almonte that is on the DL right now, but both have played for you guys.
Well, first Almonte, because the outfield was wet. We had some rain earlier in the day, and Almonte was just starting to get his bat going. Big guy, very raw coming out of high school in the New York area. And Almonte playing center field for the first time all season, because they were trying to give DJ Davis a day off. First day off for DJ, and Almonte trying to go for a fly ball to left center. He strains. I believe it was a pulled groin. And he went down immediately. He's on the DL. We hope for his rapid recovery, but he was getting his feet beneath him. To DJ Davis, and there was a question also, Marshall, sent in via Bluebird Banter, saying, is this just a streak, or has DJ Davis turned a corner? I hope it's the latter. He is having tougher at-bats. He is getting to 2 strikes. He's fouling off pitches. He's drawing walks. He's gotten hit by 3 pitches. He's been much better on the base paths, and now he's really a threat, and not just to go, but to take the base. So you have to keep your eye on him. That distracts pitchers, and that makes sure that the batter, who is ever up there, is going to likely get a pitch to hit because the pitcher doesn't have his true focus on home plate. DJ's been better in the outfield, especially with Anthony Alford here. He can become a really good right fielder or left fielder, strong arm, lot of range. But my favorite thing about DJ is not only are his at-bats getting tougher, how he's not giving in when he gets to 2 strikes. The later the game gets, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th innings, the tougher his at-bats get, the more he refuses to give in. There were a couple of games that the Lugnuts won in a row because DJ reached base, either leading off an inning or getting on with 1 out, 2 outs, just getting his speed on, because he knew he had to get on base no matter what. It wasn't about hitting a home run like we'd see in years past where he'd swing for the fences. He's saying, I'm going to foul off pitches. I'll draw the walk, or I'm just going to reach out, poke the ball on the ground, and burn it down the line. This is a better DJ Davis than there's been in a while. And I think that lends credibility to the idea that he was so raw coming out of high school. He just needs more and more games to play. He's only 20. He's going to turn 21 in July, and I think he's starting to put it together.
Yeah, it's amazing with the high school kids, that fans sometimes don't realize that it's a process, and it's tough sometimes. I mean, even and guys who are signed out of the Dominican and some other countries when they're 16 years old, a guy like Labourt who's only 21, he's going to have starts where unfortunately he goes a third of an inning and only faces 6 batters, but he's also going to have those good starts as well. And Dawel Lugo, a guy who's only 20, who you had last year, hit a couple home runs for us. David Harris had a couple doubles last night the other way. So you see glimpses, and that's what gets you excited. But it seems like you've seen a lot of glimpses so far, and it's always we love doing what we do, no matter what. But when the team's winning, it makes things a lot easier for everybody.
I think we got spoiled by Roberto Osuna and Miguel Castro just jumping up to the major leagues age 20, skipping Double-A and Triple-A. I think both of us are going to see breakthroughs. I think your DJs, with all those great young hitters, I think come June, July, August, whether it's 1, 2, 3 guys, will really separate themselves and say, hey, I've got a major league bat. I'm putting it together. The light bulb has gone on. Here we go.
Yeah, and like Mitch Ney, Matt Dean, both high school guys as well. Ney a first-round pick, Dean in the 13th round. But, both of those guys, you can see that the talent is there. And like you said, adjusting to a new level. Dean has never been here. Ney has just been here for a little bit. It takes some time. And sometimes fans, outside observers, don't get to see the work that goes in and the struggles that have to happen. And one thing Michael Saunders told me is he needed to permit himself to fail. And he learned a lot from Robinson Cano last year in Seattle, that, he could have a bad day, but Cano is so much fun out there that he doesn't let it faze him. He knows he could be, the GOAT one night, but he could just bounce back and be the hero the next. And that's what he learned from Robinson Cano, and that's what he learned really from his first few years in Seattle when he would get too down on himself and that's the phrase he used, permit himself to fail and just bounce back the next day.
Heck, consider Chase DeYoung. Chase would tell you he failed last year. That has not stopped his career. And I can add this too. Both of us, Florida State League, Midwest League, this is not conducive for hitting. Let's say you're a home run hitter in Lansing. The power alleys are so deep, and even once you get to the wall is so high, you're better off hitting the line drive. Because if you hit a sky-high fly ball, it's going to get caught. And I've talked to guys who say in Dunedin, the hitting conditions are not too much easier.
No, it's a little bit better because of the weather, and it's going to get even better with the humidity. The ball will carry. But the ballpark in Brevard County, for example, is 340 down both lines, 400 to straightaway center, and it's really tough to get a ball out of there. So you're right, and I think the approach that I've seen from Mitch Ney and Matt Dean in particular, and Dawel Lugo as well, we had 3 home runs on opening night. All went the other way, Ney, Dean, and Lugo, right-handed hitters. And that was pretty impressive, and I think that approach is there. Even on a 2-0 pitch the other day, Matt Dean hit a triple into right center off the wall. So that approach is there, especially with 2 strikes, but they don't lose that approach at any point in the count. If they see a pitch that they like on the outer part of the plate, they're going to go with that pitch, and there's some strong guys on this team. So I think, like you said, some struggles now, but hopefully they pick it up here these next few weeks, these next few months.
I noticed Mitch Ney already has 5 walks. And plate discipline, it's been pretty good for Ney over the course of his career. That said, you would never really say Ney is the sort of guy who's going to grind out in that bat. Has he been grinding so far?
No, he has. He has. And he's been really good with 2 strikes. Had a lot of deep at-bats. And I think, and, you hear a lot about his power. Only hit 3 home runs last year. It hasn't really shown up in the numbers yet. You go down to batting practice, though, and you see him and Lugo and Dean all with some natural pop. And Ney's a big guy. So I'm going to, ask John Camargo Jr., our hitting coach, a little bit more about this. But if they want to see him maybe take some more chances, he hasn't been a high strikeout guy in his career. Not that they want to see him strike out more, but maybe they're willing to accept it. And in turn comes some more power as well. that's something that I'm interested in finding out. So we'll see if that happens.
It's going to be interesting, especially as the season goes along. Around the Nest, every Friday, 5 o'clock p.m., we'll start up the show. We'll go our way through the system. And then once June gets underway, we'll start talking to Rob Fay in Vancouver and check in at those short season levels. Marshall, thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jesse. Thanks for all the info on your guys, and hopefully they keep doing well.
From Marshall Kellner in Dunedin, Tom Gauthier in New Hampshire, and Ben Wagner in Buffalo, I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler. This has been Around the Nest. Join us next Friday as we J-Talk our way through the system, and check out the podcast. We'll get it on iTunes, YouTube, etc. Make sure it's very easy for you to listen to. For now, though, let's just enjoy baseball.